Hello, everyone. This is Mr. Matt, and I am the Elementary and Early Childhood Tech Integrator and Teacher. And I'm here now to read for you chapters 7 and 8 of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. So let's get started with chapter 7, entitled Charlie's Birthday. "Happy birthday!" cried the four old grandparents as Charlie came into their room early the next morning. Charlie smiled nervously and sat down on the edge of the bed. He was holding his present, his only present, very carefully in his two hands. "Wonka's Whipple Scrumptious Fudge Mellow Delight," it said on the wrapper. The four old people, two at either end of the bed, propped themselves up on their pillows and stared with anxious eyes at the bar of chocolate in Charlie's hands. Mr. and Mrs. Bucket came in and stood at the foot of the bed watching Charlie. The room became silent. Everybody was waiting now for Charlie to start opening his present. Charlie looked down at the bar of chocolate. He ran his fingers slowly back and forth along the length of it, stroking it lovingly, and the shiny paper wrapper made little sharp, crackly noises in the quiet room. Then Mrs. Bucket said gently, "You mustn't be too disappointed, my darling, if you don't find what you're looking for underneath the wrapper. You really can't expect to be as lucky as all that." Charlie didn't say anything. "After all," Grandma Josephine said, "in the whole wide world, there are only 3 tickets left to be found." "The thing to remember," Grandma Georgina said, "is that whatever happens, you'll still have a bar of chocolate." "Wonka's Whipple Scrumptious Fudge Mellow Delight," cried Grandpa George. "It's the best of them all. You'll just love it." "Yes," Charlie whispered, "I know." "Just forget all about those golden tickets and enjoy the chocolate," Grandpa Joe said. "Why don't you do that?" They all knew it was ridiculous to expect this one poor little bar of chocolate to have a magic ticket inside it, as they were trying as gently and as kindly as possible to prepare Charlie for the disappointment. But there was one other thing that the grown-ups also knew, and it was this, that however small the chance might be of striking lucky, the chance was there. The chance had to be there. This particular bar of chocolate had as much chance as any other of having a golden ticket. And that was why all the grandparents and parents in the room were actually just as tense and excited as Charlie was, although they were pretending to be very calm. "You better go ahead and open it up, or you'll be late for school," Grandpa Joe said. "You might as well get it over with," Grandma George said. "Open it, my dear," Grandma Georgina said. "Please open it. You're making me jumpy." Very slowly, Charlie's fingers began to tear open one small corner of the wrapping paper. All the old people in the bed leaned forward, craning their scraggly necks. Then suddenly, as though he couldn't bear the suspense any longer, Charlie tore the wrapper right down the middle, and onto his lap there fell a light brown, creamy colored bar of chocolate. There was no sign of a golden ticket anywhere. "Well, that's that," said Grandpa Joe brightly. "It's just what we expected." Charlie looked up. 4 kind old faces were watching him intently from the bed. He smiled at them, a small, sad smile, and then he shrugged his shoulders, picked up the chocolate bar, held it out to his mother, and said, "Here, Mother, have a bit. We'll share it. I want everybody to taste it." "Certainly not," his mother said. And the others all cried, "No, no, we wouldn't dream of it. That's all yours." "Please," begged Charlie, turning around and offering it to Grandpa Joe. But neither he nor anyone else would even take a tiny bit. "It's time to go to school, my darling," Mrs. Bucket said, putting an arm around Charlie's skinny shoulders. "Come on, or you'll be late." All right, chapter 8 is entitled 2 More Golden Tickets Found. That evening, Mr. Bucket's newspaper announced the finding of not only the 3rd golden ticket, but the 4th as well. "2 golden tickets found today," screamed the headlines. "Only 1 more left." "All right," said Grandpa Joe. When the whole family was gathered in the old people's room after supper, let's hear who found them. The third ticket, read Mr. Bucket, holding the newspaper up close to his face because his eyes were bad and he couldn't afford glasses. The third ticket was found by a Miss Violet Beauregard. There was great excitement in the Beauregard household when one reporter arrived to interview the lucky young lady. Cameras were clicking and flashbulbs were flashing, and people were pushing and jostling and trying to get a bit closer to the now famous girl. And the famous girl was standing on a chair in the living room, waving the golden ticket madly at arm's length as though she were flagging down a taxi. She was talking very fast and very loud to everyone, but it was not easy to hear all that she said because she was chewing so ferociously upon a piece of gum at the same time. I'm a gum chewer normally, she shouted, but when I heard about these tickets things of Mr. Wonka's, I gave up gum and started on chocolate bars in the hope of striking lucky. Now, of course, I'm right back on gum. I just adore gum. I can't do without it. I munch it all day long except for a few minutes at meal times when I take it out and stick it behind my ear for safekeeping. To tell you the truth, I simply wouldn't feel comfortable if I didn't have that little wedge of gum to chew on every moment of the day. I really wouldn't. My mother says it's not ladylike and it looks ugly to see a girl's jaw going up and down like mine do all the time, but I don't agree. And who's she to criticize? Anyway, because if you ask me, I'd say that her jaws are going up and down just as much as mine are, just from yelling at me every minute of the day. Now, Violet, Mrs. Beauregard said from a far corner of the room, where she was standing on the piano to avoid being trampled by the mob. All right, mother, keep your hair on, Miss Beauregard shouted. And now, she went on, turning to the reporters again. It may interest you to know that this piece of gum I'm chewing right at this moment is one that I've been working on for over 3 months solid. That's a record, that is. It's beaten the record held by my best friend, Miss Cornelia Prinzmittel. And she was furious. It's my most treasured possession now, this piece of gum is. At nighttime, I just stick it on the end of my bedpost and it's good as ever in the mornings. A bit hard at first, maybe, but it soon softens up again after I've given it a few good chews. Before I started chewing for the world record, I used to change my piece of gum once a day. I used to do it on our lift on the way home back from school. Why the lift? Because I liked sticking the gooey piece that I just finished with onto one of the control buttons. Then the next person who came along and pressed the button got my old gum on the end of their finger. And what a racket they kicked up, some of them. You get the best results with women who have expensive gloves on. Oh, yes, I'm thrilled to be going to Mr. Wonka's factory. And I understand that afterwards, he's going to give me enough gum to last me for the rest of my whole life. Whoopee, hooray. Beastly girl, said Grandma Josephine. Despicable, said Grandma Georgina. She'll come to a sticky end one day, chewing all that gum, you see, if she doesn't. And who got the fourth golden ticket, Charlie asked. Now, let me see, said Mr. Bucket, peering at the newspaper again. Ah, yes, here we are. The fourth golden ticket, he read, was found by a boy called Mike TV. Another bad lot, I'll be bound, muttered Grandpa Josephine. Don't interrupt, Grandma, said Mrs. Bucket. The TV household, said Mr. Bucket, going on with his reading, was crammed like all of the others with expected visitors when our reporter arrived. But young Mike TV, the lucky winner, seemed extremely annoyed by the whole business. Can't you fools see I'm watching television? He said angrily. I wish you wouldn't interrupt. The 9-year-old boy was seated before an enormous television set with his eyes glued to the screen. And he was watching a film with one bunch of gangsters shooting up another bunch of gangsters with machine guns. Mike TV himself had no less than 18 toy pistols of various sizes hanging from belts around his body, and every now and then he would leap up into the air and fire off half a dozen rounds from one or another of those weapons. Quiet, he shouted, when someone tried to ask him a question. Didn't I tell you not to interrupt? This show's an absolute whiz-banger. It's terrific. I watch it every day. I watch all of them every day, even the rotten ones where there's no shooting. I like the gangsters best. They're terrific, those gangsters, especially when they start pumping each other full of lead or flashing the old stilettos or giving each other the 1, 2, 3 with their knuckle dusters. Gosh, what I wouldn't give to be doing that myself. It is the life, I tell you. It's terrific. That's quite enough, snapped Grandpa Josephine. I can't bear to listen to it. Nor me, said Grandma Georgina. Do all the children behave like this nowadays? Like these brats we've been hearing about? Of course not, said Mr. Bucket, smiling at the old lady in the bed. Some do, of course. In fact, quite a lot of them do, but not all. And now there's only one ticket left, said Grandpa George. Quite so, sniffed Grandpa Georgina. And just as sure as I'll be having cabbage soup for supper tomorrow, that ticket will go to some nasty little beast who doesn't deserve it. And that's the end of chapter 8. Hope you are enjoying the story and have a great night.